The boardroom, the job site, the leadership table. You call it the office. I call it the arena. Welcome to In the Arena with Stephanie, the podcast for high-achieving Christian women navigating male-dominated industries. I'm your host, Stephanie, certified master Christian life coach, DISC behavior consultant, speaker, author, and CEO of Her Authenticity. You aren't in these spaces by accident. You're there on assignment. Through this podcast, we're reclaiming your kingdom authority, expanding your corporate influence, and equipping you to lead as the authentic ambassador you were created to be. Let's step into the arena. Welcome to episode 1, your true identity in the arena. Knowing who you are is foundational for your success. If you do not know who you are, it will be very hard for you to achieve your goals and to be successful in the arena that you're currently in. When I'm coaching new clients, I often start with a simple question. It's a question that many women struggle to answer. And that question is, who are you? Not what you do, not your title, not your roles, but at your core, who are you? Many struggle to answer this question because they are trying to balance multiple identities. They have the woman of faith that shows up on Sundays, and they have this ambitious career woman that shows up during the week. At work, they're often told, you're too soft. They're told that they need to stop shrinking and that they need to stop playing small if they want to succeed. And then in some of their church circles, they're told they're too ambitious, or they're too strong, or they're difficult to work with. And trying to balance these two different identities leaves them feeling like their faith and their career are competing priorities. But that's not true. Because balancing two identities is a myth. You were never meant to live this way, and that's why it's making you feel so exhausted. You were not meant to be career woman and faith woman separately. But you can be both if you understand who you are. So how do you stop the balancing act? It's knowing who you are. Now here's the thing. If you don't know who you are, others will tell you. In the arena, others will tell you who you are, but they are going to base it on your last mistakes or even your last wins. And instead of being the leader that you were called to be, you become a corporate chameleon. But that is not the plan of God for your life. He has better. He has more. You see, in these industries, there is a subtle pressure to mute your faith so that you can fit the culture. And this leads to identity blur, is where you start defining your worth by the things that you do in the arena. You may start defining your worth by your salary or your billable hours or your project success or where you stand in the hierarchy or your title. But hear me today. You are not who your boss says you are. You are not who your performance reviews say you are. You're not even who your church community says you are. You are who God says you are. As a high-achieving Christian woman, in these male-dominated spaces, you are who God says that you are. 2 Corinthians chapter 5 and verse 20 tells us that we are ambassadors for Christ. And as an ambassador, your mission is different than that of an employee. So let's look at that a little closer. An ambassador called to a specific arena, that's you, is someone who is sent to represent a higher authority in a foreign land that is not their own. Ambassadors don't speak their own message, but instead they carry the message of the one who sent them. Ambassadors don't even choose their assignments. And when they're given an assignment, they don't apologize for being there. They don't wonder if they are qualified, because their authority doesn't come from themselves. It comes from the one who sent them. Being an ambassador means that your identity is rooted in representation. It means that you are representing the one who has sent you. It means that you belong to God's kingdom. It means that you carry God's authority, and it means that you reflect God's character. You see, identity from a biblical perspective is not something that we create or that we invent, but it is something that we receive from the one who has created us and the one who has sent us. You see, you aren't just an executive or a judge or a doctor or a project manager or wherever your role may be. You're not just that person who happens to be a Christian, but you are an ambassador of Christ who has been assigned to be an executive or a leader or a judge or a doctor or project manager or whatever your role is in your field. And your mission isn't one of surviving in the male-dominated culture. Your mission is to represent the values and the purpose and the character and the excellence of the kingdom that you belong to. You have an important assignment in that arena. Your authority that you have in the arena, it comes from the one who sent you, not from the one who hired you. You see, God places his people in strategic positions, and he places us there so that we can be his representatives. Now, when you embrace your biblical identity as an ambassador, you're going to see some shifts. You're going to see some changes in your life. One of the first changes you're going to see is your confidence. And you may say, hey, Stephanie, I'm a high-achieving executive. I have all the confidence I need. Yes, you do. But when you embrace that biblical identity, you have clarity on where that confidence comes from. You know that it doesn't come from your performance review or your title or whether or not your male colleagues respect you. You know that it comes from the one who assigned you to that arena. And that's important, because when things aren't going your way, or when you're feeling like you're receiving some criticism, or maybe there's a little bit of insecurity, you don't crumble, because you're walking and knowing that God has already endorsed you. Second, when you embrace your biblical identity as an ambassador, your purpose becomes clear. You stop overworking to prove that you belong. You know that you are there for more than a paycheck. You're there for more than just meeting some goals. But as I mentioned before, you know that your purpose for being in that arena is to represent God, to represent His kingdom, to have His work ethic, to be the leader that He wants you to be in excellence. And when you do that, you're going to see results. You're going to see promotion. You're going to see raises come. I can remember a time in my career where I had a manager and she was giving me a raise. And she said to me, she said, "I'm not even sure why I'm giving you this raise." I really don't think she wanted to give it to me, but there was more of a reason for her to give it to me than to not give it to me. And in that particular season, I had not done really anything amazing or outstanding, but I was just representing the one who sent me. I was having good work ethic. I made sure that my character was good. And as a result, I was seeing promotion. I was seeing raises. Thirdly, when you embrace your biblical identity as an ambassador, you're no longer afraid or, hesitant when it comes to opposition. As an ambassador, you expect that there's going to be some resistance. Because when you think about what an ambassador does or where they are, they're operating in a foreign territory. And so therefore, understanding this, you no longer see the need to have to be twice as good as your male counterparts. You no longer see the need to have to hide any weaknesses that may come up. You no longer feel the need to have to try to be someone else, but instead you can walk in your authenticity. And when you get dismissed, or you get questioned, or you get overlooked, you don't take that as a sign that you don't belong, but instead you look at it as evidence that you're representing a kingdom that this world doesn't fully understand yet. When you embrace your biblical identity, you know that you have to depend on God, because there are times when you don't feel qualified. But as the saying goes, God doesn't call people who feel qualified on their own. He calls people and then qualifies them. He sends them to assignments that are bigger than they are. He sends them on purpose so that when they begin to feel that weight, they don't lean on themselves, but they lean on Him. I must admit, there have been many times in my career where I didn't feel qualified, where I walked into some rooms feeling a little bit hesitant, but knowing that who I was representing gave me a confidence to show up where people thought that I was the smartest one in the room. I remember a director telling me that. I had just taken a new assignment. We were on a business trip, and I was attending the meetings to understand what the new role would entail. And I was just asking some questions about different things and even gave a few suggestions. And the director was in there. And during a break, she says to me, she pulls me aside, and we're talking about different things. And she says, "You are the smartest one in that room." And I thought to myself, for a minute, I thought, really? Okay. But that's what happens when you are an ambassador of Christ. Even other people they see in you something that sometimes you don't even see yourself. And you begin to walk in that, knowing that God has placed you there. Understanding your biblical identity basically gives you that unfair advantage. But so many times, as I said, we don't see it or we don't fully understand it. And I encourage you to understand who you are in Christ. So what does anchoring your identity as an ambassador actually look like in practice? Here's what it looks like. It looks like you still preparing diligently for what you have to do, but you detach your worth from the result. It looks like you speaking confidently, not because you're proving a point, not because you're the loudest, not because you're angry, but because you know who sent you. It looks like you sitting in spaces that didn't have you in mind, but you show up authentically and you stop apologizing because you have been sent there for such a time as this. It looks like you letting feedback refine you, but not redefine you. You see, when your identity is secure, you don't shrink, you don't hustle for validation, you show up steady, and you know that steadiness is powerful, especially in rooms full of ego and insecurity. So what can you do? What can you do tomorrow morning when you wake up to start being that authentic ambassador that you've been called to do? I'm going to give you three things. First, I want you to write your ambassador assignment statement. You say, okay, what is that? It's basically a simple declaration of who you are. It sounds something like this. I am an ambassador sent by God to the technical industry. My value is fixed and my authority is kingdom back. Or maybe it's something like, I am an ambassador sent by the King of Kings to the law firm. My value is fixed and my authority is kingdom backed. I want you to write yours out. And I want you to put it somewhere where you can see it daily. And before entering the office or getting on that call, I want you to read that declaration and I want you to believe it. Because when you start seeing yourself as sent instead of stuck, things are going to change in your career, in your arena. Second thing I want you to do is I want you to audit your language. Notice where you are shrinking to try to fit in. Remember, ambassadors speak with clarity and with poise. So as you're auditing your language, if there is negativity in your language, I want you to take it out. If there's negativity about yourself or about your purpose, I want you to replace it with truth. Now notice I didn't say replace it with positive thoughts and positive talk. But I want you to replace it with biblical truth. Find some scriptures like 2 Corinthians 5:20 that says we are therefore Christ's ambassadors, as though God were making his appeal through us. Memorize them and speak them when those negative thoughts start to creep in. Remember, your identity isn't your title. It's not your salary. It's not your boss's opinion. Your identity is in Christ, period. And then number 3, start living tomorrow. Start living as a representative, not a survivor. Stop blaming the male-dominated space for holding you back. Now, I know what you're thinking. I know that there are challenges in the arena. I'm well aware. And we are going to discuss some of those challenges in future episodes. But you were not sent there to shrink because of the challenges. You were sent there to represent him. Your excellence in the work that you do honors the one who sent you. Integrity in your dealings should reflect his character. Grace under pressure should demonstrate his peace, and courage in your decisions should show your trust in him. You're not there to blend in. I say it again, you are not there to blend in. You're not there to prove yourself. You are there to represent. How does that make you feel? Knowing that the pressure isn't on you, but you're there for his purpose. I want to leave one more thing with you. I want you to think about this question next week. Ask yourself, where have I allowed my workplace to define me more than Christ has? When you are answering that question, be honest. Let me read it again. It says, where have I allowed my workplace to define me more than Christ has? Is it in your confidence? Your workload? Still feeling like you need to prove yourself? Afraid to fail? Take some time. Jot down your response to that question. And then ask God to help you in those areas. Remember, you have a seat at the table for a reason. You've been positioned in your arena on purpose as his ambassador. I want to thank you for joining me today. If today's episode equipped you, please share it with one other woman who is leading in a high-stakes environment. Don't forget to subscribe so that you don't miss any episodes. I'll see you back here next week. Be an authentic ambassador, kingdom authority, and corporate influence. It's yours, so go lead.